Welcome to the Living Well podcast for Lifeworks. This is a show about the mental, physical, financial, and social determinants of well-being. I'm your host, Mark Hennick. When I was a kid, I learned a lot of what I probably didn't need to know about mental health from shows like Law and Order. People with mental illnesses were portrayed on these shows and many others for the most part, and across most media, in fact, as people to be feared. Mental illnesses were communicated in pop culture to be synonymous with danger, with violence, with unpredictability. In fact, many media reports, television shows, movies, true crime podcasts, and the like still do advance this narrative today. The big problem, of course, is that this narrative is false. People with mental illnesses are far more likely to themselves be victims of violence than to ever be perpetrators. And the predictive relationship between violence and mental illness is dramatically overblown, and it's a terribly stigmatizing myth. In reality, our public health and social care crises have failed to provide comprehensive service systems to people who might struggle with a range of mental health issues. That's what too often pushes people, forces them down avenues of law and order, rather than down more effective and humane routes. Police have become frontline mental health workers, a role for which they're neither trained nor regulated like a proper clinician would be. Prisons have become the de facto asylums. And courts routinely encounter people who would have been better served, earlier and more effectively, by a doctor or a therapist, rather than a lawyer or a judge. Later on in this episode, I'm going to be talking with Judge Ginger Lerner-Wren. She's currently a presiding county court judge in Broward County, Florida. She also pioneered America's very first therapeutic mental health court in 1997. But first, Dr. Javeed Sukhera is the chair of psychiatry at the Institute of Living. He's also the chief of psychiatry at the Hartford Hospital in Connecticut. He also happens to be the past president of the Ontario Psychiatric Association and previously served as the chair of the London Police Services Board. We talked about the nature of police calls with respect to mental health-related issues. We talked about their safety and how we can do better. So here's my conversation with Dr. Javeed Sukhera on the Living Well podcast for Lifeworks. I wanted to have you on because you're an expert when it comes to policing, of course, and specifically the interface between mental health and policing. You've been a powerful advocate on the London Police Services Board, and you've spoken openly about a variety of issues, I think, that arise at the intersection of policing and mental health. Now, I think it's no secret that a significant portion of police calls are for people in a mental health crisis, and I've even heard that estimates that it could even be the majority of police calls have some sort of a mental health element. So I'm wondering if you can characterize that for me a bit. What are the nature of the calls? Why are people calling police on people who are in a mental health crisis?
So I think, we can think about all the complexity and think about academic ways of analyzing it. But the bottom line is, right now, in a Canadian context, in most jurisdictions, there simply isn't adequate after-hours mental health crisis service. So what that leads to is that police have become a default because they're the only thing that's available 24/7. And we see police being called for a multitude of reasons. There could be somebody who's experiencing a crisis. There could be family violence. Or there could be someone who's concerned about themselves or a loved one. Ultimately, it's really backwards and not the way we want to have a system work. We don't want people to have to be at their worst state to be able to access help. And even further, police themselves will agree that they aren't and shouldn't be mental health workers. That's not the nature of policing. It's not the training that police officers receive. And so the status quo that we've got, it really isn't working. And in fact, in many cases, it's actually potentially harming some of the most vulnerable members of our communities.
I think that people often will comment, when somebody might be violent, for example, or there's some uncertainty around there, the police should be the first responders. But disentangle for me a little bit that correlation or lack thereof between violence and mental illness. Is this something that really should be a concern?
Well, I think we need to be very clear that mental illness is not correlated with being more violent or being more dangerous or a risk. It's a harmful stereotype that leads to problematic stigma. In fact, individuals who suffer from mental disorders are actually much more likely to be victims of violence in our system. But the problem is actually policy and legislation. So, existing policy and legislation is clear that if someone's experiencing a crisis or in an altered mental status, which could be because of physical illness, by the way, the only way in some jurisdictions to bring them in to be evaluated and treated in some circumstances is through working across sectors and working with policing. So if I note that someone's in crisis, I'm very concerned about the risk that they might pose to themselves. I have no mechanism of ensuring that they get that care unless I involve the police in my jurisdiction.
Hmm. Yeah, there's all kinds of political and moral and ethical stuff tied up in the involuntary treatment piece. But can you tell me a little bit, if you're familiar with this anyway, a little bit about the evidence? I mean, I'm often of the view that you can't do recovery to people or for people, that they have to, as they say, do the work. Um, but does it actually work to bring people in and compel them to receive treatment in that way?
So I think that that issue of coercion and the coercive underpinnings of the ways in which our system is designed and built is highly problematic. I personally believe that we need a radical rethink about some of the coercive norms that guide our system. What it's led to is people who are suffering or struggling, who build the courage to speak up and ask for help, end up feeling as though they're punished for doing so. And that ultimately doesn't promote engagement. It doesn't promote humanizing people who are suffering as well as people who are working in the system. Does it work? Well, I think where people will get into some tricky and important discussions is around a small group of individuals who are suffering an extreme form of agitation or altered mental status, where there really is no other way for anyone to protect them from themselves. And in those limited or extreme cases, yes, engaging in some sort of involuntary or emergency action does indeed and can indeed save them, protect them, keep them safe, keep others safe. But we can't ensure, or we shouldn't have a system that's built around that kind of coercion for everyone.
So it really depends on the goal. I mean, if the goal is to just get the person through the night, or just to get them through that individual crisis, then it helps to open up and do some longer term work later. Now, I mean, if police though are the first ones to respond, and if the goal then is to just get them through the night, to stabilize them, to keep them safe, we've seen lots of stories where the police have unfortunately done the opposite, where they've escalated a situation to levels that it didn't need to be. So, I mean, I hope this doesn't seem like too straightforward of a question, but are police adequately trained to handle these kinds of cases that do seem to make up the majority, or at least a significant portion of their calls?
Yeah, so I think it's actually a very straightforward question, and my answer is not going to be very straightforward. I would say that there is no adequate amount of training for police to be able to do what's fundamentally not their job. Policing itself is an institution, a way of approaching problems that's built around coercion. It's built around binaries and dichotomization. What we know, both from research and in practice, is that it's actually more trauma and violence informed approaches to people in crisis that can make a difference. So, yeah, we can train police to be more trauma informed. We're trying to do that in London. But the bottom line is police should not be expected to know and understand how to approach every type of mental health crises. And that's why we need to have funding for systems where mental health workers with that kind of training and who work in that kind of mode are working alongside police in ways that actually help people, help get them in to care when they need it, and ultimately provide a much more humane and less coercive experience for people in crisis.
Yeah, you mentioned systemic racism, of course. I mean, you can have two people who are both experiencing psychosis, and that on its own seems to present a higher level of risk because the behavior might seem aggressive, or it might indeed be aggressive. But if one of those people is a person of color and the other isn't, then a 911 call for that person in crisis who is a person of color is obviously higher risk. And it seems obvious because we've seen this happen over and over again, where they're seen as more threatening, they're seen as a higher risk. So then how do we appropriately deal with these intersectional pieces of systemic racism, of misunderstanding of what the presenting symptoms are with police? What's a better way, I guess, to handle all of these competing issues?
Well, it's a tricky one, right? It's tricky to distill into a simple answer. What I said earlier was this idea of a fundamental rethink. And I think when it comes to systemic and structural racism, we need to do that. I mean, we, particularly in a Canadian context, whether it's in policing or even in mental health care, in hospitals or psych units, have a long standing history of denialism and avoidance. We've tended to struggle more when people say the word racism than when, people actually experience the harm that comes from racial violence. What that requires is, we have to name it, we have to acknowledge the problem, but it also requires a change in the way in which we approach interactions. Some of our own research highlights that we all tend to fall into coercive cycles, especially when we kind of compartmentalize who we are. So if you take someone working in police or someone working in mental health, we're kind of taught to literally and figuratively armor up, which means disconnecting from who we are, and trying to grasp power, which can lead to coercive cycles, which lead to harm and violence. Breaking that cycle requires breaking the silence about the problem, but also fundamentally recognizing that these are two human beings that are more than the stereotypes or the uniforms or the labels that are attached, and seeking evidence-informed ways to really engage more humanely and openly while recognizing the risks that are inherent to that.
So I've seen other mental health advocates argue that it's not safe to call 911 somebody who is in crisis, particularly if they're black or brown or some other risk group, really. What's your advice on this? Should people call 911 currently if they feel that somebody else is in crisis?
So I can't really speak for anyone else, and I can't advise anyone else. I can tell you the answer to your question as a professional and as a person. As a person, a racialized individual who works in the system, someone who's a leader in policing, in my role as a chair, I literally, I'm signing checks. I still feel fear when I walk into headquarters, despite the structural power that's conferred on my role. And that speaks to my lived experience as a racialized person, and I'm open about that. So if I'm engaging with police in any way, I'm probably going to hesitate to do so. And I'm going to try to understand why, seek to build trust where I can, but I can't not be informed by my fear and my experiences. That's normal. As a professional, I would say I've fortunately not had to do this very often. But let's look at the past 10 years. In the past 10 years, I've had to call police on two specific instances. In both of those instances, I did everything I could to not do that. That was an absolute last resort, where in both circumstances, I explored all possible alternatives. I sought advice from someone outside of my own head, and ultimately felt that that was the best way that I could ensure that the life of this person who I was serving could be honored and protected and saved. So I think that this shouldn't be taken lightly. Sometimes it's the only choice, and it's always better to reach out to something when nothing's available. That can be the difference between life or death. But it is a decision that shouldn't be taken lightly, and ultimately we should do our best to honor the individual who might be the one who needs help.
And do you think it's helpful if you do find yourself in that untenable situation, extremely difficult situation, to give some context? If you do have to call emergency services, so you don't know what else to do, to ask if they have a crisis worker or even an officer trained in handling these kinds of dispatchers would listen to that kind of plea.
Sadly, I don't, because right now we are not adequately resourcing mental health supports, crisis supports, and police supports in these kinds of situations. Nor are people who, for example, work in dispatch trained around trauma-informed principles or communication. Someone who works in a crisis line might have that kind of mental health first aid training, but as of yet, people who work in 911 or dispatch aren't universally trained with that kind of sensitivity. So I do think it's worth a try, but I think we need to work on ensuring that whoever it is that's answering the phone is someone who's doing so in a sensitive way. We all know the difference between a sensitive individual on the other line and someone who can make us feel even worse. So if you're struggling or suffering, making sure that someone is there, listening, calm, cooperative, and understands what might be going on is really important.
I don't want to silver lining this or anything, but I am interested in ending this on a bit more of a positive note. Are there examples that you've seen where the system is working either well or at least better? Are there examples that come to mind where this could be done better?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, across North America and even within Canada, there are amazing initiatives where police work with trained mental health professionals. In London, we officially launched one last week where community organizations, hospital organizations came together for a non-police crisis response mental health workers, a team that isn't wearing a uniform, that's built and trained around trauma-informed ways to respond to individuals in crisis. It does exist. The best practice does exist. Just like so much in mental health, we know the textbooks, what they say about what works. What we don't have is adequate funding. Too many of these projects are considered pilot projects. They're not sustainably funded. They're funded in some jurisdictions and none in others. So we definitely need to speak up to decision makers and ask that these evidence-informed collaborations are adequately funded and scaled up so that more people can benefit from them.
Yeah, and to really show the people too that these programs work and that it's in fact I think a better return on their investment than the alternative. Dr. Javeed Sukhera, Dr. Javeed Sukhera is incoming chief of psychiatry at the Hartford Hospital in Connecticut. Now you've started already, haven't you, in your new role?
Yes.
So he's no longer the incoming.
I'm in transition.
You're in the transitioning into the chief of psychiatry at the Hartford Hospital in Connecticut, and he's also still currently the chair of the London Police Services Board in London, Ontario. Thank you again so much for joining me, Dr. Sukhera.
Thanks so much for having me again.
We are always moving forward. In our changing world, there is an unchanging principle for success that inspires us. By improving a person's life, we'll improve how they perform at work. We are Lifeworks. We are the world's leading total well-being provider. We are innovators with tech-enabled solutions and one integrated platform. We have the scale of a large company with the agility of a startup. We are experts in our sector and are continually learning so that we continue to be valued and trusted partners. Our mission is to improve people's lives by supporting the whole person, their mental, financial, physical, and social well-being. We empower people to prioritize their well-being and help them with challenges at important moments in their lives. We believe this creates happy, healthy, and empowered people. These people are the heart of successful organizations, leading these organizations to a more resilient future and making a real difference in the world and in our communities. We are moving forward with purpose. improving lives, improving business. We are Lifeworks.
Welcome back to Living Well. I'm Mark Hennick. We've been exploring the intersection between mental health and policing, both from the perspective of the person who is struggling and from the perspective of the many people who may or may not be trained to actually help them. Since this is a broader social issue, I want to shift gears now and move a little further downstream. Given how our social systems are designed and the pervasive societal stigma that continues to surround mental health, people with mental illnesses are indeed overrepresented in the justice system. Following the deinstitutionalization trend of the last few decades, paired with widespread failure to adequately resource community services and do the needed work, it's been said that prisons have become the de facto asylums. But some novel approaches have arisen over the years to try and inject some humanity into the system. Dr. Javeed Sukhera mentioned earlier in this episode the movement toward including mental health professionals in police calls. I've personally worked at agencies that have provided mental health professionals as court supports, and a system of drug courts and indeed of mental health courts have arisen over the last 20 plus years with a true heart and mind oriented toward human rights and recovery. Judge Ginger Lerner-Wren is currently the presiding county court judge of the misdemeanor mental health court of the 17th Judicial District in Broward County, Florida. She pioneered America's first therapeutic mental health court in 1997, which has been dedicated to the decriminalization of persons with mental illness. Judge Lerner-Wren, I'm honored that you could take the time and be with us today. Thank you for joining me.
Mark, it's such an honor to be with you. I'm a huge fan and delighted to talk, of course, about such an important subject dear to my heart.
Well, thank you so much. And, on that subject, I don't think that mental health courts in particular, although they've been around, now for almost 30 years, I don't think they've really entered into mainstream awareness. So why don't we start there? Can you tell me a little bit more about the court that you started and have been doing for a very long time now? What is it and how does it differ from a typical court system?
Sure. I thought your introduction and description about problem-solving courts, of course, was really just perfect. It was a great introduction. And the mental health court in Broward County actually in June turned 25 years old. It is the first in the United States. We didn't really think about it in our community, whether it was done before, not done before. But we were facing a really serious problem with regards to our jail system and looking for solutions. When I was a lawyer, I came out of the disability rights space, and I developed specializations in discharge planning and consumer rights and psychiatric rehabilitation. So when I happened, it was really somewhat of a lot of synchronicity. But when I came to the bench, my community was looking for change, and I had those skill sets. We didn't have any grants, no funding, but we sure did have shared vision of a community with a thirst for justice. And I'm so proud of Broward's mental health court, diverted over 20,000 people. It's a part-time court. And it is under the banner of a problem-solving courts, and it's deemed a human rights strategy.
That's incredible. Diverted over 20,000 people. So, give me I don't even know what that looks like, and I don't think many people do. What type of person, if you can say type of person, comes before you in a court? What's the typical of that 20,000 people?
I just think that's such a great question because I was working in mental health for years before I came to the bench in this court. I thought I knew the face of mental illness, and I could not have been so wrong. It's everybody. It's anybody. Mental illness does not discriminate, and access to care is the problem. It is the root cause problem. I lived in the state of Florida. We have very scarce resources, very shortfalls in funding, and no Medicaid expansion in the United States. There's only 12 states without Medicaid expansion. So people, that really needed services ended up going ultimately into crisis, maybe using drugs or alcohol, and one thing would lead to another. And it's just we've had everyone, all kinds of, people in all kinds of professions, from lawyers and nurses and accountants to professional athletes and artists and of course people that one would think, people that are homeless and that suffered from unemployment and family erosion and lost their family support, and there's so much poverty. So but I think largely it's anybody who just has not been able, due to stigma, due to lack of access to care, ends up justice involved.
Yeah. And what kinds of cases are they bringing forward? I mean, why are they getting
Sure.
involved with the legal system to begin with?
Well, I preside over a misdemeanor court. These are tend to be low level offenses, everything up to a year in jail, and in cases involving trespass, disorderly conduct, petty thefts, small, alcohol violations, just really just a whole range of low level nuisance, quality of life types of offenses.
Hmm. So then, I mean, these are the types of things where if somebody goes to jail for a year and they already have a mental illness, presumably that's not going to help. It's probably going to make them a whole lot worse, of course. So what sorts of judgments are you handing out anyway? What's the nature of the diversions, I guess, that you're implementing?
Yeah, exactly. So first of all, I would hope that people that get arrested with misdemeanors are not going to jail for a
Hmm.
year. But
Sure.
I think that what we were seeing, this is a diversionary court. We don't have trials in mental health court. I have an in-court clinician, and it is a collaborative court, an interdisciplinary court, a trauma-informed court, you name it. But more than that, it's really about intercepting people when they hit the jail system and getting them out of the jail system, one inappropriate system of care, to a therapeutic and humane system of care, even if it's home. But oftentimes people are experiencing mental health crises at that point. And so, they may need hospitalization and stabilization, or just pathways to services in the community.
Yeah. Now, what presumably you're tracking, have some way of tracking what the outcomes of this process are, or what the outcome is, especially compared to what the typical judicial process is. I mean, I've heard that when people are diverted, that the outcomes are much better, that reoffense rates are much lower. Is that what you're seeing in your experience
It
as well?
is. It is. We've been evaluated several times. When the court first started, our recidivism rate is actually quite low. It averaged around 12%. But that's the court is really dedicated to one thing and one thing only, and that's serving the individuals that come in front of the court and their families, to lever, if you will, the authority of the court to access care, and not just any care. I mean precise, qualitative, preferred care. And that includes, peer support, and just really centralizing the scarce resources in this court. So I really think it is, the court's dedication is really to hold the community providers and the treatment providers accountable to the people that we serve.
Yeah. No, I mean, recognizing that you're dealing with misdemeanors primarily, but we see mental health related interventions, for example, in not criminally responsible type interventions at other levels of court as well. So I'm curious, though, that every time these kinds of conversations come up of injecting a mental health lens, a trauma lens, a human rights lens, even into justice, a lot of those old stigmatizing ideas seem to still crop up. And some common comments that I've heard is that the perpetrator's getting off easy, for example, that they're not being punished. And that's a whole other philosophical question, right? Does justice equal punishment? Or, for example, that the victims of the vandalism or whatever it is, that they're not getting the justice that they need. How do you answer some of these, I think, stigma-informed criticisms that treating somebody who has broken the law for any reason with the mental health lens is somehow letting them off easy?
Well, I think that I really don't pay a whole lot of, I think our focus is really very, very different. And that is, we were seeing essentially two things happen. Judges and lawyers are not trained in responding to the complexities of persons with mental illnesses and all kinds of neurocognitive disorders. And it's interesting, and I do also, not, a shameless plug, but I did author a book, A Court of Refuge, Stories from the Bench of America's First Mental Health Court. It's dedicated to a young man by the name of Aaron Wynn. Aaron Wynn didn't even have a mental illness when he actually had a traumatic brain injury from a motorcycle accident, but he ended up just really escalating and really just with a low level offense, ultimately ending up in a forensic prison in solitary confinement for almost 2.5 years and 4 and 5 point restraints. When he was ultimately released, he was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and about every other kind of mental illness you could possibly imagine. I mean, these are really serious human rights issues that we're responding to. And the idea is that we don't want people trapped in a jail cell, and we don't want a revolving door. We want people to get the health care that they need. Mental health is health. And that's really the message, that we send in the court, and that we have an abiding belief in recovery.
I don't know if you're comfortable answering this or not, but it seems like in that kind of case, you're taking somebody who is already vulnerable, you're putting them into a system that doesn't help them when the system doesn't work. And in fact, I think that seems to be how the system usually works, is the broken way. It seems like in that case, it's the justice system that's actually creating criminals of people who otherwise wouldn't have been, had they gone through a system like yours.
Well,
what do you think of that?
I could certainly say this, that it's a blurry line, between patient and prisoner and criminal and victim. I just think that the beauty of problem solving courts and problem solving justice and looking at interventions through a therapeutic and a human rights framework gives us the green light, if you will, to really get people out of a system that can do so much harm. We know what happens in jails and prisons. We know about the punitive nature, and people that are ill can't follow directions, and then they end up being, punished. And, we really want to intervene, quite frankly, as swiftly as we can, well, and really from a backdoor system. And I think our goal, like I certainly don't go around the country or internationally and necessarily advocate mental health courts. I'm advocating resources for mental health care.
Judge Ginger Lerner-Wren is the presiding county court judge of the misdemeanor mental health court of the 17th Judicial District in Broward County, Florida. That is a mouthful. But Your Honor, thank you so much. Thanks for the work that you've done. Thank you for everything that you continue to do. You're a real champion and hero for mental health.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to and watching the Living Well podcast for Lifeworks. My thanks as well to Dr. Javeed Sukhera and Judge Ginger Lerner-Wren for their incredibly insightful comments on today's episode. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen to podcasts, all the usual places. If you're also watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and share it. Tag me on social media as well if you're sharing it on your social media accounts. I'm at Mark Henick. That's at MarkHenick on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube as well, wherever. I'm not hard to find. So thanks again for listening to and watching the Living Well podcast for Lifeworks. I've been your host, Mark Henick. Until next time, take care and live well.